May God bless you all. Today we're going to continue our sharing on pastoral lessons by talking about, first of all, identity. Now, pastoral identity involves the confidence that in the midst of changing circumstances, I still remain a pastor, and that in many ways I can take this for granted. Now, to myself as a chaplain, I feel like a pastor, and therefore do not have to be concerned about this when I try to offer ministry to another person. Now, because pastoral identity is only a part of my total identity, and also is one of the later developing parts, this tends to be more vulnerable to identify diffusion as a result of changes in role and function. As a later developing part of my identity, and because it makes up only a portion of who I am, it may sometimes be competitive with earlier ways in which I thought of myself. Now, it is important to note that pastoral identity, or identification of oneself as a minister, is an issue covering both lay ministers who function in a specialized pastoral care ministry and for ordained clergy who carry out all of the functions of ministry. For lay ministers who have previously had a different relationship to the persons who they have been assigned to offer pastoral care, being seen as a minister and experiencing oneself as a minister is a somewhat surprising experience. We can take now an example. Let's talk about Judith. For instance, Judith is a lay minister who has been, let's say, in a 11-week lay ministry training course provided by the nearby hospital's clinical pastoral education supervisors. Now, she has been commissioned by her church as a lay minister and has functioned in that role a little less than a year. She's visiting a family that she has known for many years in an extended care facility. And when she arrives where the patient and family are, she is introduced to a friend of this family whom she did not previously know as one of the church's lay ministers. Now, in her reflection on the visit, she noted that even though she had been known longer as this family's friend, in this visit they identified her as a minister of their church. And having been identified in this way during the visit, she was approached by a second friend as she was leaving this facility. And this person had seen her visiting the family, and she sought Sarah's guidance about her own relationship to the family. Later, when the consultation group of lay ministers in her church discussed this visit, much of the discussion centered around Sarah's different relationship to this family, in how they perceived her, how she functioned, and how she experienced herself as a minister. Most important was Sarah's developing awareness that there was something different in her and in her relationships when she was functioning as a lay minister. She was seen differently as more than just Sarah, and more than just, Judith. And she experienced herself differently, as if something was there that was not there before. And that affected the way she functioned. Now, she acted differently in relation to those who saw her as minister. She was freer to do things that she was less comfortable with before, and perhaps she was less free at the same time. This increasing awareness in Judith of the more involved in her relationships when she was functioning as a minister touches on the responsibility and accountability involved in acting, being and functioning as a minister and a representer and reminder of God. There are more things to be careful with in the role and function of minister. She is not just herself, she is representing God and all things associated with God in the experience of the persons to whom she offers care. The more that she carries with her in being a minister allows persons to be more personal, more serious, more themselves with her than they might be otherwise in a friendship. Because that kind of intimacy is possible, however, there is always at least an implicit expectation that any intimacy present will be kept within the pastoral relationship and not carried over into a friendship. Because she was perceived as minister, Judith carried with her a kind of authority or power that Judith did not have. Her responsibility to her ministerial calling and to her colleagues in ministry require her to use this authority and power responsibility, not attributing it to her intelligence, personal charm, or other elements in her personality. The responsibility requires her to limit that authority to her pastoral function and not extend it into other relationships with that person. She may know that person well as pastor, but she may not use that knowledge for her own satisfaction in any kind of relationship. Responsible limits on the pastoral relationship will be discussed later on in our talks, and failure to recognize these limits is the cause of destructive and abusive relationships that have grown out of failure to have appropriate boundaries between the pastoral and the personal. Thank you, God, for today's pastoral presence sharing. We ask you to be with us, and we ask you that as chaplains we always maintain our boundaries between the personal and the pastoral. And may God bless you all.